Good afternoon. Welcome to the press conference of the ministerial meeting of the Bucharest 9 cooperation platform. We are happy to have welcome here today foreign ministers of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Hungary and Slovakia. We will start with short statements from the ministers and later we will have time for questions from the press. Now I would like to give the floor to the Foreign Minister of Estonia, Eva-Maria Liimets. Please.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's been really great pleasure to host the meeting of today of Bucharest 9 countries and here in Tallinn. Bucharest 9 platform was created to advance NATO's agenda through consultations and also to strengthen the security in our region. And I'm pleased to say that this platform has really started well and it's well understood and well established by today. And I'm very pleased to be here together with four of my colleagues. Our Czech colleague had to leave a bit earlier today, and altogether we were here, 9 countries from Bucharest 9, in addition to the US, and also we had a representative from NATO. I'm also pleased that high-level representatives for all these countries came to Tallinn, and we had very good discussions over the day. We had an excellent exchange of views on a number of issues, including on the security situation in Europe and in our region. We also talked about NATO's future and the next strategic concept to be adopted in next NATO's summit in Madrid next year. All of us expressed strong support for transatlantic unity and solidarity between our countries. It is evident that we face a magnitude of threats and challenges, including from Russia, whose assertive actions remain in most present threat to the transatlantic region. NATO must continue to focus first and foremost on collective defense and continue to strengthen its deterrence and defense posture, including in the eastern flank. NATO must also continue to adapt and address new challenges, new technologies, and cyber and hybrid challenges, but also challenges that China may pose to democratic countries. All of us expressed strong solidarity with Lithuania, Latvia, and Poland on connection with the state-orchestrated hybrid crisis. We discussed also NATO's open door policy. We emphasized the importance of NATO's open door policies, and we also, all of our countries, we have seen the success of these policies, and we believe that these policies must continue. Strong support was expressed to this very important and successful policy by all of our countries today. Finally, we also took some time to focus on emerging and disruptive technologies that play an increasingly important role in our security. Estonian Professor Mart Noorma, member of the NATO's advisory group on emerging and disruptive technologies, provided us with some valuable insights together with very interesting presentations. In conclusion, today's meeting was a good opportunity to consult before the NATO Foreign Ministers meeting in Riga in 1 month, and I believe that our format shall continue also in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. And next in line, Foreign Minister of Hungary, Péter Szijjártó.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all of you. First of all, I'd like to express our appreciation to Minister Liimets for this wonderful hospitality which has been extended to us during this meeting here in Tallinn. We have discussed the major security threats in our region. Hungary considers the massive illegal migration and the positions of the international organizations about migration as the 2 major security threats on the Central European region. We are currently confronted by migratory pressure from 2 directions. We unfortunately got used to the pressure from south, but now we have to experience pressure from the east as well. And in the meantime, we experience that some bureaucrats of UN simply lose their common sense when they urge Latvia to accept those migrants who try to violate their borders and want to force Latvia to allow these people to submit their requests for asylum. And when we listen to the bureaucrats and commissioners in Brussels speaking against fences at our borders, sometimes we raise a question whether these people live on the same planet with us. I have to underline that Hungary will continue to protect the borders very strongly, and we express our full solidarity to the Baltic countries and Poland, who have now been physically confronted by this phenomenon, which we had been confronted since 2015. We find it unacceptable that any countries should receive aggressive migrants, those who attack and cause injuries to our border guards. I'd like to underline that migration is currently an even more dangerous phenomenon than before. It used to be already a phenomenon posing risks on the field of culture and security, but now it poses a huge risk on healthcare. That's why we have to make our best in order to protect our countries from this very dangerous phenomenon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. Next in line, Foreign Minister of Latvia, Edgars Rinkēvičs.
Well, thank you very much. And first of all, also I want to join Peter in expressing our gratitude to Eva Maria and to Estonia for hosting this event and for wonderful hospitality and the wonderful surroundings that we have here. And as Eva Maria said, actually, we are now in preparation of Foreign Ministers meeting of NATO in Riga at the end of November, beginning of December. And I think that this meeting here in Estonia, the Bucharest 9 meeting, was very valuable to discuss issues that are related to our understanding of common security challenges, also to exchange views on how we see the need to develop the new NATO strategic concept. And from our perspective, we see that the discussion today, the contribution of this discussion into the discussion in Riga and then in Madrid next year will immensely help to develop also our common position when it comes to the preparation of strategic concept. Obviously, there are a couple of elements that I think we can all agree. The first is that NATO needs to have the core function, defense of its territory, defense of its allies in the region preserved. We also agree that we need to tackle emerging challenges, and one that we were talking was Indo-Pacific region and also China. But also it is absolutely clear that hybrid warfare, hybrid operations need to be also duly reflected into the new strategic concept. We have seen already cyber attacks, we have seen already issues that are related with disinformation, now migration being used as hybrid weapon. Most probably also energy is going to emerge as the kind of instrument of pressure. I think that also the preparedness of the alliance in this respect needs to be addressed, and definitely I would say that we need to reflect also on lessons learned from Afghanistan. We also want to see the good discussion about the open doors policy, how we actually tackle this issue in next strategic concept, how we tackle it in NATO policy. And also I'm very happy to see that issues that are related to Western Balkans, also the meeting with Ukraine and Georgia is going to happen in a month's time in Riga at NATO meeting. Finally, let me also say that yes, we discussed also a lot about issues that are related to defense capabilities, the new technologies, but what is very important, and this is the message that I think is important to reiterate, is defense spending. If we want to have NATO really up to the speed to the all the challenges that the alliance and its member states face, then we need to increase collective funding, and of course each and every NATO member should keep the commitment on defense spending that we have agreed 7 years ago in NATO Summit in Wales, and that's 2%. Many countries in B9 are spending 2 or more percent. I think that Latvia and Estonia actually are at the same footing, it's 2.3 something. But I think that this is important, that if we really want to keep up NATO's capabilities and also transatlantic dialogue, not to forget also about this most important thing. We can write a lot of concepts and a lot of visions, but concepts and visions without resources become merely hallucinations, and I think that this is also very important to keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. The next Foreign Minister to speak is the Foreign Minister of Lithuania, Gabrielius Landsbergis.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear Eva Maria, well, first of all, let me thank you for really warm hospitality and indeed a fruitful discussion that followed the setting that you provided and the ideas that you presented, and I think it is very, very valuable. More than almost actually two decades ago, we've all became part of the alliance, understanding on the same understanding about the threats that our countries are facing and were facing. And I think it's very important for us now to exchange notes. How do we see the threats currently? How do we see the old challenges? How do we see the current challenges? And I have to say that on most cases, I believe that we're on absolutely the same page. We still see that the reason why we feel threatened most of our cases, it's still there. We still see military activity not so far to the east from our eastern border. We agree that commitments made to our eastern partners, namely Georgia and Ukraine, that they've been stalled. The conversation is not where we would like it to be. We also had an opportunity to exchange notes and ideas about the new and emerging challenges and threats, and my colleagues already mentioned some of them. Firstly, it's hybrid threats. We had an opportunity to discuss cyber threats, energy threats, but also a new phenomenon that some of us faced earlier this year, namely migration threat, which is used as a hybrid weapon in order to destabilize the situation, not only in our countries, but in the European Union, in order to make us withdraw our political attention from the issues that we deem very important. I very much value the discussion that we had on Indo-Pacific, and I think it needs broader reflection. And it's not only a responsibility of countries who are geographically there, it's not only of the countries who are geographically everywhere, but also it's a need to discuss in here where we are and we deem ourselves valued partners for global security. Because the global security is no longer born just in the Northern Atlantic. It's being created in Indo-Pacific as well. So once again, I'm very grateful for the possibility to discuss the strategic ideas and exchange views, and I really hope for next year's invitation to Bratislava that we will continue our conversation.
Thank you, Minister. And now to close up the round of statements, Foreign Minister of Slovakia, Ivan Korčok.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of you, and my gratitude and expression of thanks goes to our host, Eva Maria Limec, our colleague, Foreign Minister of Estonia, thank you for the hospitality, thank you for organizing this important event, which becomes a tradition of these 5 countries, Bucharest 9. I want to say that this is a group of countries which views alliance as the most important instrument and organization which ensures defense and security for our citizens. It is irreplaceable. In that respect, I want to say as well that NATO does not seek confrontation with anybody, but NATO will stand up, confront anybody who would like to question our security, our values and defense and the well-being of our citizens. This makes NATO so strong, and I want to call on all of us within the alliance to work on unity, which is the most important political asset which we need to deal with the huge challenges that we are facing globally, but including in our neighborhood. And second, NATO will be strong if we further develop its operational part. And this is about developing our national capabilities that we can pull together to really provide a deterrence and convincing defense, which is the very core function of NATO. We have had a very good and extensive, valuable discussion about strategic concept of the alliance. We've started to work on it and we will adopt it next year at the summit in Madrid. As I have said, NATO has to remain a collective defense organization, yet for NATO it is important to engage with partners globally. If NATO wants to remain relevant, we need to engage with partners globally, and therefore I share the view of my colleague and neighbor here that we've had a very important discussion about the situation in Indo-Pacific region. 2, I consider it very important that we engage and that we cooperate even more closely with the organization with which we share the seat of our alliance, and that's European Union. We need it for many reasons. EU, as it represents the most important instrument for us when it comes to prosperity, but it is not separable from defense and security, because without security everything is nothing, and we need this cooperation between NATO and European Union. Also in our neighborhood, I would like to point attention, as my colleagues have done, to the Western Balkans. This is an important area. We cannot afford ourselves of not being present there. We need to engage more with the countries who have started and who are continuing important reforms that bring them closer to us, to European Union and NATO. 4th, I'd like to express the solidarity with Poland, Lithuania and Latvia. These 3 countries have been target of a orchestrated hybrid actions and operations carried out by the regime in Belarus. This is absolutely unacceptable. It only shows that the regime in Minsk is not only oppressing its own people, it wants to destabilize the neighborhood, but I can tell you it will, I think, pull us together to help, and stood by these 3 countries, but also we should be even more united in helping Belarusian citizens who are seeking just what has become so important for us after 1989. That's freedom and democracy. And last but not least, as my colleague has already mentioned, I have used this opportunity and invited my colleagues to meet next year, sometimes in spring, with this platform of BINA in Bratislava, Slovakia. I'm looking forward to welcoming you all in my capital. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ministers, for the statements. Now we are open for questions. Please introduce yourself, the outlet, and address the question.
Arni Alandi from Estonian Public Broadcasting Corporation, and my question goes to all ministers. It's said that the relations between Russia and NATO are getting a new low after recent diplomatic crisis, do you see any solutions for this crisis, and how relations between NATO and Russia must go on after this crisis? Thank you.
Foreign Minister of Estonia, would you like to start?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for this very important question. And of course, it was unfortunate to see these recent developments that you referred to. From our perspective, it is important to have a dialogue between NATO and Russia. Working level dialogue is very much welcome because there are many global threats where all the countries need to cooperate together. Either it's terrorism, either it's climate-related threats and challenges for us. So on the working level, this absolutely we have to cooperate and find the ways forward how to cooperate. Thank you.
Foreign Minister of Hungary, would you like to answer?
I also would like to argue in favor of a respect and trust-based dialogue between East and West. What we have learned from our own history was that whenever there was conflict between East and West, we Central Europeans have always lost, and we don't want to be losers anymore. So when we argue in favor of a dialogue, effective and pragmatic dialogue based on common sense between East and West, this is because of the consequences we can draw from our own history.
Thank you. Foreign Minister of Latvia.
Well, very much agree with what my Estonian and Hungarian colleagues have said. I think that we all are ready and support the dialogue on issues that are of relevance to both NATO and Russia. But I think that also the question should be redirected from us to people in Moscow, because in order to have a dialogue, you have to have openness on both sides, readiness on both sides, and we have heard recently that there is not much of interest in Russia to do that. So let's ask them first, and then we will come back with our answers second.
Thank you. Foreign Minister of Lithuania.
Well, first of all, it proves that Russia is trying to prove that it is an adversary and not a reliable partner, at least on a diplomatic scale. And I think that the strategic patience has to become one of the tools that NATO and the West need to apply in this situation. I think there is more need for Russia to talk and to cooperate than it currently admits. Because some of the threats are equal for the West and for Russia as well. But as my colleague Edgar said, now the ball is in Russia's court, and we need to wait.
Thank you, Minister. Foreign Minister of Slovakia.
I think it is obvious that we may have, and we do have, diverging views on substantial issues which concerns, the security and the interest that both sides, both NATO and Russia, is following. There are divergences, but still, in order to not to further escalate, we are ready to talk. But as my colleagues have said, the ball is on the other side. The hand that we've been reaching out, that has to be reminded for months to talk to Russia was not accepted. What Russia has done is regrettable, namely to close entirely its mission to NATO and NATO's mission, NATO's representation in Russia. But I still believe that there is a way how to maintain dialogue, and we need it. We need the channel and line of communication to keep it intact exactly in order to avoid misunderstandings in many areas. But now they made this move, they made this step. We're waiting how they're going to deal with that further. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there more questions from the press, please?
If there are no more questions, I will ask one more, and it also goes to all ministers. So tensions in Taiwan Strait are getting very serious at recent times. The People's Republic of China is getting more and more aggressive towards Republic of China, and it's also said if China will really attack Taiwan, this means end of all democratic world order. So what must be the stance of NATO in these questions, and how Western countries can react to those tensions in the Strait of Taiwan? Thank you.
Foreign Minister of Estonia.
Thank you very much for this very important question, and of course we all follow with concern if one or another country is threatening by military means civil society, peaceful demonstrations, etc. So therefore, of course, we follow also with concern current developments in Taiwan. At the same time, I would like to also say that Estonia supports One China policy and continues its relations with Taiwan based on this principle. And Estonia has good relations with Taiwan on cultural affairs, on economic affairs, and we believe that this kind of cooperation is positive and important also to share our democratic values with this part of China who is functioning based on these democratic principles. And what to do? It is, of course, a difficult question. From our perspective, we have to convey this message towards China to really say that it is unacceptable to use military means towards or against its people, and this is important to do the same or deliver the same message all around the world where there is the case that people, that countries, governments, administrations go with military means against its people. So we here in our part of the world, we believe to the fundamental values, the principles of freedom of assembly, freedom of expression, and we strongly believe that we have to support strengthening these values also all around the globe, but especially, of course, in transatlantic era. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Foreign Minister of Latvia.
Thank you. I thought that alphabetically it goes to Hungary.
Yes. Hungary. Foreign Minister of Hungary.
Follow.
Sorry. Yes.
Okay. Anyway, I have a very short answer that sports and politics are very similar to each other in a way that sentences starting with the word if do not make sense, so they should not be commented.
Well, I think that we all know that NATO's Article 5 covers NATO members, and NATO members only. And I do believe that we already talked here a lot that the tensions in the Pacific region is something that we are discussing in NATO as well as in the kind of groups that gather from time to time, like this group, more and more often, because we understand that tension in the Indo-Pacific region or escalation in the Indo-Pacific region affects also global stability and affects also all of us. And that's why we would be happy to see that actually there are more diplomatic efforts to address some of those challenges. And that's where the discussion that we are going to have in NATO Ministerial in Riga, then discussion in Summit on the strategic concept, on how NATO addresses also more assertive players like China, like Russia, is going place. But I think that at this point, that wouldn't be actually possible to, let's say, model any kind of eventualities before we haven't completed our internal discussion within the alliance on the new strategic concept, on how we are going to respond on those many challenges that we have, both geographically but also to some extent sectorally. That would be at this point my answer, but I still keep reminding to many of journalists and experts who are also discussing the issue like you just presented, that we should read very carefully Washington Treaty and the legal and political boundaries of that treaty.
Thank you, Minister. Foreign Minister of Lithuania, please.
Thank you. Well, I think, first of all, you're raising a very important question. China is already acting aggressively, not only with the measures that you've mentioned, but also economically. It uses economic coercion in order to force countries to adhere to the foreign policy lines that it sees fit as a country. The first country to feel the extent of China's coercion was Australia. Now Lithuania's turn is to withstand. And I think that the most important thing here is that China's behavior is a test for the West, and test at the global West. If Western countries, if we admit that Australia is a part of the global West, at least as values-based and democratic countries are concerned, if it's able to withstand, then we can say that coercion as a tool is not effective. If Lithuania withstands with the help of its partners, with the help of its friends, then we can say that coercion is not effective. That the West, even without the fifth article, can withstand the economic pressure, providing that it helps each other out. Some questions starting with the if merit answer. We would answer the question, what happens if Russia becomes more aggressive? We would say we would need more security guarantees. Therefore, I can answer the question, what happens if Taiwan is attacked? And I say that this will, again, be a test. If the one China policy to which all of us adhere can be imposed with military power, by killing people, by bombing cities, invading an island. That's a very difficult and tough question that will test all of us. What is our answer? And ambiguity might not be a way to go. And we see, and to add to that, because we're a part of NATO context here, we see that some of our very much valued NATO partners and allies are giving commitments in the Indo-Pacific, security guarantees, not namely to Taiwan, but to a broader region. And that raises a question. What if a NATO ally is under attack? Not in the North Atlantic, but somewhere farther away. Therefore, I think that it is, as I mentioned in my initial statement, that it's very important that NATO sees the region of Indo-Pacific as a strategic one and has an answers ready in case of any one of the ifs arrive?
Thank you. Foreign Minister of Slovakia.
This is a very serious question, no doubt about that, but because it is serious, I will not engage into speculating what happens if. But we have to have our own compass in it. And the first one, the point of departure for me, that we as a community, I mean the West, are united, including when it comes to such important developments as the strategic shift that we see taking place and underway in the Indo-Pacific area. I too want to say that China, we share within the European Union, and to a large extent, I hope, within NATO as well, that China is a partner because we need it in some areas, definitely. We can benefit from that relationship. But China as well is a systemic rival. And China is a competitor. So I think when I said the unity of the West, our national interest when dealing with China is that we ensure that it is played by the rules on the international scene. Now, this is the main objective for all of us, and two, I think there will be an opportunity for us, for the allies, to discuss that when we discuss the strategic concept next year. It's not about NATO bringing there, but it's how to deal with the rising power of China, which is present in our regions as well.
Thank you, Minister. Are there any questions left? No. Thank you all for coming. The press conference is over.